Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. I'm Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by Harold Muliati. He's manning the video switcher and mixer, and he'll also be co-hosting. Dr. Susan is not in this week, and she may not be in next week either. She'll be back from vacation in a couple of weeks. Today, we're going to talk about perceptions of time and also perceptions of what some call illusion. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com, your training and video partner.
And we are back, and it's about time.
It's about time. It's about space. It's about a thing called the human race. Boy, that's aging me. That's an old TV show that was really corny, but funny at the same time, with Joey Ross and Imogene Coca and the two astronauts who go back in time. Harold.
Yes.
You've heard the saying, you're in the moment.
Oh,
you're
definitely.
in a zone. What did you always think that was?
Well, I would say that the moment isn't the past and it's not the future.
Okay. It's a moment.
Yes.
It's an interesting concept. A lot of people like to say, you must be in the moment. You must be in the now. I'll argue that point. There is no moment, and there is no now, because the difference between past and future is constant. We live in a continuum. We don't live in a moment. We don't live in a now. Now is gone before we even know it. The moment is so small. If you try to measure a moment, you're probably at an infinitesimally small amount, because it happens so quickly, no one could ever perceive it. I don't think our senses would have to slow down so much to even be able to perceive that. Doesn't it make more sense to say we're in a present and we're conscious of that present at that time?
Yes. Although I do think there's also an element of this idea of staying in the moment where it's somewhat about time, but there's also a part of it that's about not being carried away by imagination or something abstract when there's something more concrete that's relevant for you to pay attention to.
Let's call that being in the present.
Yes.
You're being aware of where you are, what you're doing. For example, when you are running a production show like we're doing, the show requires that you be in the moment.
Oh,
if
yes.
You will, but you can't be because that moment's gone. So it requires you to be in the present. The now could really be the present. It's your waking moment. Are you awake? Are you asleep? If you're asleep, you're going to miss shots. You're going to miss things that are going on in the show. If you're awake, if you're attentive at that moment, in that time, then you're in the present. You're
Yes.
actually aware. You're functioning.
And realistically, in this case, being in the present does involve being aware of the past and the future, because you won't necessarily notice everything as it's happening. It might be 2 seconds ago, something happened that wasn't supposed to happen, or 2 seconds ago, I missed showing something that we were supposed to show, and realizing that.
And when you say in the future, you're anticipating who's speaking next.
Yes.
Is it a guest? What kind of transition are you going to do? What kind of switch? Are we doing a cut? Are we doing a fade? Are we representing time? Usually fades represent time because they're slower. Cuts are instant. Boom. They're in the present. They're in the now. But if you really think about it, the Australian Aborigines, they believe all time is one. It is the past, present, and future all intersecting at one point. Surprisingly enough, quantum physicists are coming to the same conclusion, that all time is now. It's really a fascinating concept. And there's a lot of quantum physicists who are delving into the world of consciousness. And what they're finding is that our consciousness really transcends time. We're in all time at all time.
Yes, well, I suppose our perception of time is sort of like a way of slicing. You know, we can think of objects, of people, anything impermanent, which is just about everything, as an object or an entity extruded in the fourth dimension, where time being the fourth dimension, we're only seeing a slice of it every moment. It's good
Well,
getting back to
Well, we're
moments.
seeing what we perceive.
Yes.
And our perception could be in the past, could be in the present, could be in the future, which in essence means our perception is always now. Except we can take our minds back into a very realistic past. We can take our minds forward into a very possible future. There's a lot of talk about things like The Secret, which is nothing more than what used to be the law of attraction. And that says that and that really goes back to the Hermetic principles of way, way back when, what, Hermes Trismegistus? I think that's where that all started. And there was a book written years ago called The Master Key, which really was the beginning of the movie called The Secret and everything else, the law of attraction, which in essence says that we attract things that come to us, good, bad, indifferent, but we do attract things. And I think that can be probably proven because the more you think about something, the more you tend to attract that to you. If your thoughts are not good, you tend to attract not very good things to you. But other things are attracted, and they may not always come to you when you think they will, but they kind of eventually do in one way or another. So the law of attraction is, again, related to time, related to our perception of time, and related to what we want to achieve within a certain amount of time, which would usually be in the future, or kind of the continuum between present and future. And then we can go back and look at the past and say, we missed something, but now we're aware of it. Maybe at the moment we weren't, but as we go back in our brains, oh, wait, there was a couple of things I didn't notice at the moment, but they're still registered in the brain. You know, our eyes are constantly, well, our senses are constantly picking up information, data. But we're not always aware of what we're picking up at that moment. Harold, would you say that you remember things after the fact that you weren't really aware of at that moment sometimes?
Well, yes. And I do think there is a component of picking up things that you perceived but did not notice at the time. However, I think that a measure of care needs to be taken with this because I think the brain also has a way of filling in things where a gap doesn't make sense. So sometimes it may be just this sort of seamless fill-in of a memory where there actually was a gap, and at other times it was something that you actually perceived but simply didn't pay notice to at the moment.
Now, that's an interesting segue. We didn't plan this, by the way. We're just going as we go. But that is a very interesting segue to the second part of what we wanted to talk about today, and that is a concept that comes from the Hindu, from the Indian teachings, Maya, which people refer to as illusion. And then people say, well, life is an illusion. Is it really? I'd say no. I think Maya was always misinterpreted in the West. Not so much for the people who actually defined it, but in the West it's been misinterpreted as illusion. You could say life is an illusion, but it's not really an illusion. Life is real. This is here. You're hitting it. It's something else. The illusion is how we perceive something, the filters we put on it. Now, we do a lot of video work. We do photo work, training work. When you're doing video and photo, you're working with an illusion, if you will, sometimes. You're working with video. You're capturing something. That what you're capturing is real. It's there. It's what you just captured. How you edit it may look a little bit different afterwards. You're creating an illusion, or you're creating something different from the edit. Our brains, like Harold just said, fill in the gaps. That's where the illusion comes in. That's where denial comes in. I would say Maya is really denial, not illusion. We deny things because our filters, the way we filter what comes at us, whether we're smelling it, tasting it, hearing it, or seeing it, or touching it, all of that is going to give us a perception of something. For example, if you do an exercise and you pick up something, this kind of goes back to the 3 blind men and an elephant. They're all doing something with the elephant, trying to feel it, and they all perceive it to be something else. But if I pick up this microphone and I don't know what it is, my eyes are closed and I'm feeling it, I can feel it's metallic. It has sort of a metallic sound or some sort of composite. I can touch it. I know there's some sort of grill here. It has a bar across the grill. It has a back. Oh, look, something can come out. It can unscrew. This looks like it might be a mount. So based on my knowledge of what a microphone is, if somebody handed me this and I was completely eyes closed and the only sense I had was touch or maybe hearing, maybe even smelling, I go, doesn't really smell like much. Well, metal doesn't really smell too much like anything. So what would it be? I'd probably feeling this go, it's probably a microphone or something similar because I'm aware of what a microphone is. If somebody doesn't know what a microphone is, they may say it's something totally different. It could be completely different in their perception of what this might be. It's an auto part. It's some sort of metal thing. It's not a gun, but it could be something like that.
That's a nice electric shaver you've got.
It's a nice electric shaver. It's got the, yeah, there it goes. Perception is how we define what we see, hear, feel, smell, touch. That creates a memory which tells us what something is, even if we're only feeling it. Our senses are really three-dimensional. We can create more out of a three-dimensional thing than we think. And that's why somebody throws you a ball and you pick it up and go, oh, that's a tennis ball. Oh, no, that's a baseball. Oh, wait, that's a basketball. It's a bigger one. Or no, this is a volleyball. We can tell by size, by feel, by squeezing, by touching it, by the leather on it, what it is, or the plastics on it, or the rubber, whatever they're made of. So our perceptions vary depending on what we perceive things to be. Therefore, our brains, when not trained well, will lie to us about almost anything. Because our brain doesn't know what it is, we'll make it up. We make a lot of things up. You've heard of the experiment where an accident happens or an event happens and 10 people are told to observe the event and relate it back afterwards. Of those 10, usually only one probably gets it right. 9 other people just make up the event, make up things they saw. They get the information wrong. We saw a car accident. It was a red car with a blue one. No, it was actually a white pickup with... It's amazing how we perceive things, what we don't perceive and what we do perceive, how we interpret those perceptions. So throw in the filter of our brains, our minds. For example, if I say something that may be true but sounds bad to someone else, they could say, oh, you're a hater. That's something commonly used nowadays for just about everything we either don't understand or have a firm misconception of. So I make a comment and somebody says, you're a hater. Why is that a hater? Why? And they'd have no idea how to explain it. Or you say something and go, that's not true. That didn't happen. Well, how come I think it happened? Am I fooling myself? Maybe. Maybe I perceived something that happened that didn't. Maybe it was a dream. But the dream was so real, I thought it was real. And when I woke up, I thought it still was real. And it's now in my living memory, not just a dream memory, which we tend to forget many times. So, Harold, when you think about illusion or Maya, do you get what I'm saying about it? That we're filtering out reality to what's convenient for us, which goes back to your premise that we fill in gaps, which we do.
And on that topic of visual perception, one thing that our viewers may notice is that right now my eyes look rather red in the video. This is a visual perception thing. It looks as if I woke up 20 minutes ago, or perhaps I was crying. However, I know something that the viewers might not necessarily know. I know that the color balance is off on the webcam here because I was adjusting for different lighting conditions. Therefore, my eyes are looking more red than they should. So
that, and you only did wake up 20 minutes ago.
boy, and there's a. So in this case, there are two filters put on. There's the filter of the camera and the digital processing, and then there are the viewer's own eyes, which put on another layer. And so it's not so much an illusion that they receive, however, it is a distorted reality.
Or an assumption.
Yes.
And we all know what assume means.
It makes
an ass out of you and
me.
I've always liked that one. It's a good way to, because we do assume a lot. And that's because we fill in the gaps on everything. The more rich our experiences are in life, the more we can probably assume and fill in the gaps more correctly. The less experience and knowledge in life we have, the less we can assume correctly because we're not sure. We make it up. Now, we're very happy in our make-up state because more often than not, people just make things up all the time. They've done a lot of studies right now that if you go to a college campus today and you ask somebody something, they will generally give you a bit of a response that is completely random. Interesting. There was a book called Campus Non Mentis, No Mind on Campus. And it's from a professor who was checking his students out for years, asking questions. And he said, lately, all he gets are random answers back. What is 4 plus 4? Green. What is green? It's a mathematical number. Okay. Now, he's not exaggerating. He wrote a whole book on responses he's gotten throughout the years, and some of them are hilarious. But if you look a little deeper, they're pathetically sad because that means we're just random blah blah generators. We're not really talking well. We're not understanding or comprehending what's going on around us, which puts us in a kind of critical place. It makes our survival threatened. Just think about it. If you can't answer anything and you're not really sure how to do certain things, you may not survive. That kind of puts us in a turkey state.
Well, yeah. And I think this goes back to that, the brain filling things in. It shows that when we're not examining when we're not consciously selecting what it is we're doing, then we have a way of just filling things in with things that's with an action or words in this case that's just good enough. Good enough, and we believe it. Yeah. We believe it. They've done studies that the brain is very similar to a hard drive or an SSD nowadays. When hard drives and SSDs get fragmented, meaning large parts of it are broken up, it doesn't mean the memory's gone, but the memory's fragmented. It may not be able to relink to other parts of the brain where the rest of the memory is stored. So we have fragmented memories just like our computers have fragmented data or information. What happens with that fragmented memory is really fascinating. I have a relative who can make it up on the fly. My wife calls her a compulsive liar, but she's not. She's a compulsive make-it-upper because she doesn't know what that reality is. So in other words, the brain fills in the gap of a story she's telling, and it changes. I knew a guy once, his mother died on 5 different occasions. 5 different years, when he was 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Now that's talent, to die that many times and keep repeating. That's like Groundhog Day. You keep repeating the experience over and over again. But he didn't know what the reality was. Whenever he told you his mom died, it was a different year, different time, and it would vary every single time he told you. And the interesting thing about that is if you corrected him, he got all angry and huffy. No, this is when she died. She was 18. I was 18 at the time. Or I was 12. Or I was 14, 15, whatever it was. But in reality, we have no idea when she died. She died once in those 5 times. How? We don't know. He filled in the gap every time with a different date.
and he had no recollection of what the real date was. It's really fascinating. And like this, we all have some of those gaps. Every one of us. Not all of our brains are completely contiguous. They're fragmented. And so sometimes when we realize the fragment, we don't fill it in. More often than not, we don't. We know something's missing, or we won't say it, we won't talk about it because we're not sure anymore. And there's nothing wrong in saying, I don't know, or I'm not sure. That's actually being very honest. When you start making things up, then people think you're a compulsive liar, you're making it up, you don't know what you're doing, you don't live in reality. But in reality, the cortex, which stores our memories, is not finding it. But it's very clever. It doesn't want to disappoint you. And if you're not very conscious of what you're thinking, it won't, because it'll just fill in the gap for you and give you whatever you want. You're happy. If you care about how you say things, what you say, then you're probably not going to be so blabbermouthed about it. You'll slow yourself down. You'll think about it. I don't know. Maybe. Could have been. You're going to put a qualifier on your memory because you're not sure. That's being wise. That's being smart. That's stopping yourself from proving you don't know what's going on. It's an interesting phenomenon. We all do it every so often. We fill in something very, very, very quickly. They're saying it's sub-second. That's how fast our minds are. No matter how fast our computers are, our minds can usually keep up. We can retrieve information very, very quickly. And because it's quick, the cortex, where the memories, again, are stored, is so quick at filling in the gap, we may not catch it. People around you might, because they've heard your story 4, 5, 6 times ago. And it changes. And they may start thinking, well, you're a BSer. You may be. But you also just may be a victim of a fragmented memory. And because our memories are based on time, the time which is past, present, and future, continuous, may not have a tag in the memory that's correct. You know, we're very much like computers in so many ways. Computers are patterned after us. But as we find out more and more about neuroscience and our consciousness and the way the brain works and the way the organs within, or the sections within the brain work, it is pretty amazing what we're finding out and where we are flawed or where we have the potential to basically make it up or live an illusion, live in Maya, live in denial of what reality is. Any closing comments on your end, Harold?
Well, this might be a bit of a long closing comment, but I was just going to say this makes me think of another book, a psychology book from, I don't know, I think the early 2000s or the 90s or something, called The Invisible Gorilla by Christopher Chablis, I believe. But it's on a study in which the researchers got a bunch of randomly selected people, and they had them watch a basketball game, videos of a basketball game, and they gave them certain parameters about the game, things that they wanted them to look out for, certain players scoring and so on, that sort of thing, finding out who won, who passed the ball to who. And at the end, they asked them, people performed pretty well in this respect, but at the end they asked them, did you notice anything unusual about this game? And then most people said no, and after that they replayed the footage of the game for them and pointed out that there was a man in a gorilla suit coming onto the court and going off. And I suppose the findings of this study, the significance of it is that we have perceptual bias based on what tools and the context we're given. And our brains tend to work with what we're given, what we perceive based on the parameters we give it. So people's stories, for example, may change because part of the things they were filling in were based on the context of the situation of when they were telling it the last time. The situation they were telling it in the last time may have been different, and they may have been filling certain things in based on those cues.
And it's fascinating. I remember reading that, and I saw, I think, a small documentary on that too about the man. I saw the video of the guy in the gorilla.
Yeah.
And there was very little comment from the audience. Some people made noises or giggled or laughed, but a lot just were like, oh,
I'll probably link the video of the basketball game.
It was fascinating.
Because it's
and it's true. If people expect something, then that's what they're looking for. And if something comes out of the ordinary, there's one of two things that'll happen. They'll see it or not, or they may misinterpret what they saw. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. You can ask somebody who just saw the same thing you did, and you saw it clearly, and you know exactly what it was, and the other person thinks it's something totally different. And it makes for an interesting study in humankind and what our potential is and where we have some critical flaws that could get us in big trouble and have. I'm convinced half the wars we go to, nobody really remembers why we started them. And here we are. It just never changes. And then you have, of course, the people who go to war because they know why they're going to war. Nobody else does, but they do. Usually it's about money, property, or something else. So it's very interesting. Our minds, our brains, illusion, Maya. It's really denial. It's not seeing reality for what it is. It's not an illusion. It's neuroscience, if you will. There is a reason why it happens, and we're learning more and more about that reason, which means more and more we'll be able to figure out how to help people with that. Now, there are no real meds that do things to fix that. There are things that quiet the brain or slow it down a bit, which may help in memory reconnecting. But there's not much to really fix a cortex. There's no, what was it? The Norton disk defragmenter or disk keeper. None of that. You've just got to figure out where the memories went. That's why amnesia is so hard on people. When they do get real amnesia, they can't remember. Nothing's linked. Though in some cases, the memories are all there. They're just below the surface of our consciousness. So we have no idea what things are until maybe we can figure out a way to get back and link them. Not an easy task. Well, anyway, that's your walk along the path of continuous time. Present, or past, present, and future. Do they merge together? Probably. Are we aware of that? Not really. Can we control that? Yes. And there are many ways to learn how to control our brains better. And we'll get into that maybe in some other episodes. There's exercises we can definitely do to put us in that now, or in that present, aware, alert intent. For Tech Down Over, I'm Rick Zanotti with Harold Muliati. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. If you have any comments, let us know. If you've got a thumbs up to give us, give it to us. Thumbs down, we'll take that too. We're not fussy. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
And that's a wrap.